when that candidate, whether it be diversity, inclusion, equity, whatever they're looking for, right? When they walk into that store, can they see themselves in that role? Can they see themselves included and feel included in that store? Do they feel like it's open? Because I know that there's been times, and I've been all across the country, I've walked in stores and walked right out because it doesn't look or feel like a place that I would feel included at.
Welcome back, everybody, for another episode of The Wheelhouse, and we are super excited to continue on our series. And today, to help us with our discussions, really, we're going to be shining a light on the power that you have in your dealerships, showcasing some of the unique and diverse narratives of the people that you have working in there, and how is that something that you can employ to help make your dealership stronger and really set you apart and make an extraordinary culture and an extraordinary tight network of people that you have in the dealership by just getting to know and understanding who it is that you have and the stories that they have in the dealership. So to help me do that, we've got Dimitrius Naylor, who's a director of Cavender Nissan. I have Karen Byrd, GM of Colonial VW Subaru, and Alan Brown, GM of Sampax 5-Star Chevrolet. And as of course, a quick reminder that the opinions and views expressed herein are those of the speakers themselves and not their associated companies, ASOTUs, or its affiliates. All right, now that we've got that out of the way, we always do start off our show with a 30-second each person around the horn. What do you see? What do you know? We're 3 weeks basically into the new year. And Alan, I'm sorry, let's go ahead and start with you. I've got 30 seconds on the clock. And go ahead.
Yeah. So, it seems like January's starting out a little soft. I've got to go back 4 or 5 years to see if I can get a similar cadence. I think we all pulled some business ahead through COVID. And, when those customers are coming back to us to trade, there's a difference in rate. And obviously the used car market has corrected itself. So we got a few headwinds here in January that's different than the last couple of years.
Right, and some markets do correct themselves, and that's one of the benefits of being in the free market enterprise. And so it's but it's good to hear for people that understood that was happening, and it sounds like you're well prepared for that. Karen, I've got 30 seconds on the clock for you. Go ahead when you're ready.
Awesome. So I do agree with Mr. Brown. I'm sorry I didn't get your first name. I do agree with you. We are certainly seeing a shift now in the industry, even though rates are dropping. However, I think we have to just get back to basics, do a lot of data mining, things that we did before, we experienced the pandemic era. And I do think that they're going to eventually, stabilize. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I appreciate that. And 30 seconds back up on the clock. Dimitri, go ahead and round it out.
I think the biggest thing we're seeing right now is margin compressions. We're definitely seeing everybody scrambling for retention as market share definitely becomes a race for most of the dealerships around me that I see. But retention being one of the biggest issues, along with the dropping of rates, but then the negative equity situation that is really taking a toll on a lot of dealerships. So definitely some interesting headwinds, as Alan said. So definitely agree with his sentiment.
All right, I won't take the time now to refer you back to my stance on retention versus loyalty, Dimitrius. But if only you had loyalty, you wouldn't be worried so much about retention. But it's okay. We cover that in a different episode. That's all right. What we're going to do now is sort of get into our in-depth discussion. And I actually had a conversation with a few people. Dimitrius is one of them, and we're going to start off. And here's a quick clip that we're going to play about. Why do most people not share about their unique upbringings in the dealership environment?
You approach every situation with what's the catch? What's the catch? What's the thing? What's the get me? What's the gotcha in every situation? So you're very guarded. I didn't until very recently, not very recently, but like more recently as I got longer in the tooth of my career, like start sharing and my new thing is like full transparency, but fully sharing all the experiences, because like with Melvin, like you just don't know how people are going to perceive you. So if you don't know how people are going to perceive you, so it's better off just to keep it status quo. So that they don't judge you or, they're looking for you to do whatever the circumstances that you came from. So I don't know. For me, it's just I never shared. I got used to not sharing too much. keeping it very surface level, keeping it very, very minimal conversation, you just knew that Demetrius was going to show up and work like a dog, and then he was going to go home.
Yeah, Demetrius, I'll tell you, that scared, as a GM, as someone, that runs stores, like, that scared me, right? That there'd be somebody that would show up to a store and work as we're asking them to work, but not feel comfortable to share about themselves as a person. Whether the opportunity is given could be one of the reasons why not. But let me go ahead and ask our panel. Karen, Allen, what do you guys think about that?
Well, I'll go first. It starts with us as a leader being transparent and being open. The moment we expose ourselves, right, especially as we're getting to know somebody in that beginning stage, that sets the tone that they can open up because of what you just exposed for yourself. All of us are broken. All of us have made mistakes in the past, or got into the car business because we couldn't afford to go to college, or different, economic reasons. And we got in, we got good mentorship, and we flourished from that standpoint. So as leaders today, that's what we're responsible to do, is to help build up the generation below us. And sometimes that takes us exposing ourselves first to get them to open up, and then we can find the best that they have to offer, not only us, but themselves.
And what I would like to add to that, as leaders too, we lead the whole human. We get to know them, get to know their families, and also share when we can, about who we are, where we're from, what was it like, growing up, where I went to school. For my story, I think it's a unique one. I grew up in South America. I came to the United States at the age of 17. I love to share stories about my country and, our culture there and stuff like that. I think it's really interesting. And I also like to learn about other people's, where they're from, if they have different cultures, because I'm into different foods, from all over the world. So for me, I'm open to just getting to know them in every way possible I can, or whatever they're willing to share with me too. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there a fear of being labeled? Is there being typecast or, something like that? Is that something, Dimitri, you're nodding yes. Is that one of the reasons in it's sort of, other than, let's assume you don't have the leader that presents that type of authentic leadership. If you start talking about yourself, are you, from different backgrounds, does that then, are you concerned about being labeled? Are you concerned about having a name attached or a title attached?
Yeah, you definitely are concerned about the diminished value that your maybe austere upbringing or whatever it was. You definitely worry about that diminished value. You definitely worry about somebody labeling you and going, oh, he's one of those guys, or he used to be X, and they're waiting for that other shoe to drop, and like, oh, he's going to be the quote unquote angry black guy or whatever it's going to be. Like, you just don't know what other people are going to typecast you as, and code switching became the new thing, just like diversity did, and all these different labels. And it's just, you don't have that confidence that you're not going to be judged and that you're not going to receive diminished value over time based on being fully transparent in who you are and what you were.
And I think that will vary by culture. Every culture, every dealership environment is completely different. They're not all the same. So I can agree with Dimitrius and where he's coming from. That culture has to support, that person wanting to open up as well. It has to be the culture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and no one's doubting that you go to work and work, right? But the thing is about how much better it is, because like if we're talking earlier about, the loyalty that we want to generate from clients, right? And I just firmly believe this is a hill I will plant every flag on. If you don't have that from your team members, you're not going to expect that. Do not expect that from your clientele. If your team members aren't loyal to it, right? And like Erica Bruno said, if your team members don't want to come to that place, then you can't expect that your clients would then also. So it's not about that I wouldn't expect that any of you would come to work and not give me, everything that you know how to do. But the question is like, what's the untold benefits and bounty of when you have a place that welcomes you as a human being?
Do people feel comfortably showing up as their authentic self? And once you allow that space and that brevity for people to say, like, I show up good, bad, or indifferent, I'm Dimitrius. This is who I am. This is what I represent. I overcame some challenges just like most of us have, but I show up as this person authentically, and I don't have to mask on every single day when I show up to work. And then that's where you build the real loyalty, because they recognize that you're a real human being. And then your associates can come in and say, boss has bad days too. Boss has a real family. Boss has all these different things that are going on or have happened in his life. And then you can really show that, not just because I'm in this position of power, then you can really show like, hey, I overcame that adversity. So can you. And then that really becomes where that bridge is gapped.
Yeah. I really can't. No, I really want to also amplify what Alan said earlier, authentic leadership. It's not just, I wish it wasn't a buzzword because it's such an important concept. It took me forever to be able to talk about experiences from the military or PTSD and ADD related items from that. And it took me a while to be able to say that. Once I did, though, the conversations that I could have with my team became infinitely better. And it's not that we couldn't have conversations before, but the language we use or how we were talking could definitely improve. So I, really can't applaud Alan enough for that. Authentic leadership is something that's sorely needed. If I could get around the horn of around a minute of what your individual story was, the good but Cliff Notes version of from the starting point to how you got here today. And so, Karen, if we go ahead and start in the top left corner and go ahead and tell us.
I moved to the United States when I was 17. I was born and raised in South America, Guyana, very small country. It's right next to Venezuela. And I started out life very young, marriage, children, very at a very young age. So it was very difficult for a woman, let alone a woman of color at that time, to enter into the automotive industry. But that didn't stop me. I mean, I went on a tour of several dealerships in a day's time. And the very last one, I almost gave up and I almost quit. And then I came home and I decided to give it one more try. And when I called, the dealer principal at that time happened to answer the phone. Believe it or not, back then, the dealer principal answered the phone. And my first question was, do you hire women? And he said, absolutely. I said, well, I would love to come down for an interview. And I said, can I come in now? And he's like, yes, absolutely. Come on down. So that's where it all started for me. And once I got into the industry and realized that this is what I wanted to do, I never looked back.
Alan?
Yes, sir. Well, in 1990, I started washing cars and going to college. And the whole purpose of it was to build up enough money so I could go off to college. I was going to community college. My grandfather actually worked for Ford and retired from there and said, hey, Ford was good to me. So I started at a Ford store in Garland, Texas, and ended up spending 27 years with the family, had incredible mentors along the way. So I love telling sales associates that come to work for us that, I started much lower than you did because I washed cars about 2.5 years in the very beginning. I came from very blue collar, humble beginnings. My father was a police officer. And in fact, I thought when I retired, or when I got through college, I wanted to be an FBI agent. Right. That's all I knew. But a conversation with our GSM kept me in the business. That fast forward my career with the family, ended up partnering in 3 Volkswagen stores. And I was chairman of national council through the emissions scandal with Volkswagen of America. So, I've got to see and do a lot of things. And it's been from learning from good people in this industry and learning from the day-to-day activity of this industry. That was my Ivy League college.
Dimitrius, let's go ahead and wrap up with your version of how you got to where you are from the beginning.
Down and dirty quick is for me. Got out of the Marine Corps and went from the Marine Corps to being homeless. Poor decisions, poor planning on my part, but ended up being homeless for 1.5 years. Went from couch surfing to actually living in my car, sneaking in and out of hotels to wash myself and being able to wash my clothes in sinks while I was cooking at restaurants, and literally served a GSM, my very first GSM. I served him some food and sold him on a sandwich that we were selling. And he was like, if you ever need a job, you have a job with me. And I literally entered the car business while being homeless. Sleeping out of my car. I saved enough money, went and bought some dress clothes and showed up to the dealership. and he slid a box of blank cards over to me, said, "I've been waiting on you," handed me a box of blank cards and a phone book and said, "There's your desk right there." And it's been history ever since. And I just naturally gravitated towards this business because he took a shot on me. He gave me an opportunity. And I think that's the biggest thing for myself, is just making sure that I forward that opportunity to as many people as I possibly can. And that's how I came into the business, and just been running ever since, and trying to make sure that I steward the opportunity that was given to me.
And go on to the next thing. We talked to Melvin Rodriguez. Melvin's been working on the East Coast for a long time. I'm working in PA right now at a great store, a great organization. And kind of off the cuff, I just asked him we're talking about everyone's upbringing in their childhood and what got you here. And it was almost just like an off the cuff question. I said, "What's a memory from your childhood that sticks out?" And here's the answer that he gave us.
I went to a birthday party that I begged my parents, I think, for days and days to let me go. And leaving the birthday party, which was like literally 3 blocks, I was coming out of, they had a small hall where they did the party, and I came out, and one of the guys grabbed me thinking I was somebody else and put a gun right to my head, just out of thinking that I was somebody else's brother looking for somebody that owed money. And probably the scariest moment of my life. I never ran home so fast.
And that's shocking to a lot of people. And then that's also at the same time, probably there's people that are listening to this that are like, yeah, I can relate to that. Do we know in our stores, those kinds of stories? Do we know in our stores that, that kind of a path that people have been on before they got to us?
Absolutely.
I don't think a lot of times, because of the way stores are set up, and we don't have that diversity in our stores a lot of times, or we haven't had it, there hasn't been a safe space to share those kind of experiences. And when everybody looks like one person, you want to act and feel like that person as well. So I don't think there's a lot of space for that, or there hasn't been a lot of space for that, to share in those experiences, and say, like, hey, I went through something similar, even if it's salesperson up or whoever it is, it doesn't matter. I just don't think that there's been a whole lot of space for that in the past.
Yeah. I think you calling it space is a smart way to do it. I think that there is a human element of what we do every day, and then there's an HR element of what we do every day. And sometimes we can get massively watered down with the HR element and forget the human element. And we've got to work hard and making sure that we spend plenty of time and space in the human element.
So true. Very true. And that is why I mentioned earlier, we have to coach, lead the entire human. I like to be able to have one-on-ones on a regular basis with my team. Because, there's a lot that you have to learn about them, when they're going through, having a bad day, let's talk about it. What's on your mind? Do you mind sharing? And they know that I care. And, in that aspect, they'll open up, and then they'll let me know what's happening. And I listen to understand where they're coming from, and whatever support that I can lend at that time, I'm here for them. I mean, I've had an instance once where I had an employee totally lost it on the job, completely mentally, and everyone was afraid of him. And I pulled him aside and I said, listen, I understand exactly what you're going through. I know I personally have a family member that's going through the same thing. I understand, and it's okay. Let me get you some help. And I drove him to the hospital, right after work, and got him help because I understood. So, we have to care, we have to ask, and we have to be there to genuinely support them. Yeah.
Yeah. And I suppose maybe this would be a question for a legal expert in the realm of what we can ask in the HR world, right? But I mean, are there worthwhile questions that we can ask in the interview process? I guess my other question would be, do you see a benefit to that, to asking those types of questions, to gaining kind of information? Could you ask somebody what's a story, a formative experience you went through in your childhood that lasts with you to today?
Go ahead. To bridge the gap with that, I think I touched on it in the very, very beginning of this. It starts with us. Let me tell you my story, right? Let me tell you about my walk. What got me in the car business? Why did I have to perform at the level that I needed to perform at based on what I was walking through as a young adult that couldn't afford to go to college and this sort of thing, right? So I think when we, with the experience, right, start to walk somebody through what that path looks like and what that path was for us, then we've earned the right for them to respond. Now, if they choose not to respond, then we have to be sensitive because we're still building the relationship. But I have learned in all my years of doing this, when I tell you everything, right, and I expose it all, it's amazing the feedback that I get, right? And that's feedback that I didn't have to go prod and scare HR with. I exposed who Alan Brown was. And by doing so, I started to build a relationship.
Yeah, that's incredibly impactful. And so, I mean, it's almost, because I think a lot of times when you get into an interview process, maybe we're too cautious to talk about ourselves because we want to be making it about the other person. But the point that you just made, right? I mean, it's the more, you give them the opportunity based off of what you've just said.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay. And I think so. The next, what we're sort of leading to here, as far as benefits to knowing these types of stories and knowing the paths that people have traveled on. How does this affect recruiting? And so we've got we'll hear from Dimitrius again, and kind of what do you look for when recruiting?
All the high performers that I've run into, most recently, one of my, salespeople, she was looking for a house with her kids. I posted that online as well. Their whys drive them. People without whys, to me, it's just like, it's hard to motivate, inspire, and grow those people because they have nothing they have no attachment to anything. It's very much difficult to get those people across a certain line. I like people that are internally driven, and those are the people I resonate with the most. And I think that does come from my background of being homeless and then being in an orphanage and it's just people that just keep driving. Those are my people.
Well said.
Yeah, tell me about. I mean, yeah, go ahead and expound upon that, because as you were asking, is what do you look for when you're looking for a place, right? When people, businesses are recruiting, but so is the talent pool, essentially, right?
Yeah.
So go ahead.
I think the why for me is, once you figure out somebody's why, and then you make it bigger than the work, you make it bigger than the dollar figure. When you figure that out, that's an internal fire that no amount of anything can drown out. They're either going to find it and achieve it with you, or they're going to find it and achieve it with somebody else. My job is just to steward that and go, okay, this is what you said you wanted. I'm all on board on helping you get there. This is the pathway we can get you there. And I think what we're both looking for is aligned. If you do this, I'm going to get you there. And then we're going to figure out, how do we get you to the next level of that thing, right? So the young lady said she wanted a house, right? Okay, now she wants a house. Okay, so now you got the house. What's the new thing? What do you want more than just a house? What does the house provide? And then once we start peeling back that onion and we start figuring out what the true why is, it was really, she wants a house that all of her grandkids can come and visit, but then she wants to be able to have a place where she can pass along to her kids when she retires, or when, God forbid she passes. So she was looking for a secondary house as well. So once we start uncovering those things, we can then just start, okay, hey, look, this is how we get there. Keep them on the path. And then that helps motivate them, and then we can grow them. And then when they get sick and tired of it, or they have that off day or that bad day, we sit them back down and be like, hey, remember what we talked about? Remember why you're here? Hey, let's just bring it all back in, go take the rest of the day off, but don't forget your why. And then I think that brings it full circle for a lot of people.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, you go ahead.
So I'm going to take another perspective of that too. So when I meet someone for the first time and interviewing them, for me, I look for, beyond passion, is if they really want the job, not necessarily, knowing how to do the job. Because if people don't have that spark in their belly and that passion to want to do something, it's very it's most likely that they're probably not going to go the extra mile or give it, because they have to show up with something, and then we add to that. We prepare the career path for them, and we support them along the way. But it's funny that we're having this conversation, because this morning I read a quote from Simon Sinek that is so true to what we're talking about, and he said, "Great companies don't hire skilled people and motivate them. Great companies hire motivated people and inspire them." So the bulk of the work, just like Mr. Brown said, and I'm so sorry, I keep forgetting your first name. I didn't write it down, by the way, so I apologize. The work is on the leaders. I mean, it's really on the leaders, because you can hire the best guy out there, but he gets there and you're not doing what you're not doing what it takes to cultivate and help to develop the skill set and unlock the potential in that individual. It means nothing. They're going to leave anyway.
Yeah, it's the and I've heard that. I mean, Simon's a brilliant individual, no question. One day we'll be maybe lucky enough to have him on here. Also, I've heard that also actually from Dan Nordstrom, explaining about Nordstrom's hiring philosophy and hiring for the attitude and train for the aptitude, and I think that makes a lot of sense too. What I mean, how would you use these sort of things? I mean, does this apply in a strategy towards recruiting when you're looking for, other than, Karen brought up some great points. What else is there in understanding the different types of backgrounds that you have in the dealership or that you don't have in the dealership? Does that matter? Does that help in recruiting? Does it matter how does someone perceive the store when they walk in and they look around? Does that still make an impact in their decision about where to go work?
Absolutely. I think so. I think when people come to us, besides putting out an ad and looking, for candidates, I think a lot of the candidates we get, they search us out. They search our Google reviews, they read our customer comments, and a lot of times they want to work here because of what they read, the feedback that they're also seeing. So I believe that those candidates, they do their homework. Maybe it's word of mouth from somebody who purchased a car here before that recommended, hey, maybe this is a good place, to work. So yes, I do feel that they do have some, insight about the company. And then, I also like to take time to share the feedback with the history of our company, where we started, where we came from, where we're going. I think all of those things are very important to let the candidates know.
And all of us do a lot on social media, with our employees and different departments. And that's a great way also to attract that new talent out there, because they're seeing employees in real time having fun and being celebrated in a social setting. So you can't fake that; it's genuine and it's authentic.
I think we just skirted past one portion of that conversation. I think has to be acknowledged. And it's just like when that candidate, whether it be diversity, inclusion, equity, whatever they're looking for, right? When they walk into that store, can they see themselves in that role? Can they see themselves included and feel included in that store? Do they feel like it's open? Because I know that there's been times, and I've been all across the country, I've walked in stores and walked right out because it doesn't look or feel like a place that I would feel included at. It doesn't. It was very all one way. We'll say whitewashed one way, or it was all brown washed a different way, and I didn't feel included, or I didn't feel like there was space there for somebody who looked like me. And I think, and I said this last night, if we're going to have diversity, and we're going to keep on using this word because I think it makes a certain demographic of people feel good, that they can say, oh, yes, we're a diverse culture. Another very popular word right now, right? We're a diverse culture because we have one black guy, we have one Spanish guy, and then we don't know what Daniel is, right? So we have these group of people, right? And then they're like, yep, we're very diverse. But if that person can't walk in that store and feel like they would be included, and they would be welcomed, they would be appreciated and celebrated, that person's not going to want to stay there. And they're not going to stay there for a long period of time. And I don't mean to go down this rabbit hole of all these different races or anything like that. But I do want to acknowledge the fact that we have to start providing an environment, one, for our employees, so where they feel safe, honored, celebrated, appreciated. But we also have to start looking more like the communities in which we expect to take from. And I think once we start recognizing that for so long, we took from communities that did not look like us, but we expected to take their hard-earned money, but we didn't employ those same type of people. We had a problem. We still have a problem in this industry. It may not be as bad as it used to, but it still exists. I worked from West Virginia, North Carolina, and it still exists. I talked about it last night. I still got the comment, we don't want the front office to change the look of the way it's always looked. Well, you read between the lines. And I think that is where you start to recognize that we have a problem in this industry where we want the entire dealership to look like one person or one subset group of people. And until we break that and dismantle that, this industry still got a lot of work to do.
Yeah. So, to Naylor's point a minute ago, where he really had to just touch on the subject head on, and thank you for doing that. I believe when you get your culture to a space and place, you can do this. When you're going through the interview process and you're going through the start of that, you need to have a culture where that potential candidate can go talk to anybody in the store and ask them any question about their experience as an employee in that store, period, end of story. And if you start to lose a candidate over that, then, hey, let's remember something. The head controls the body, right? And then maybe the head of that store needs to do some self-evaluation on what culture he's really or she has really created versus what reality is.
I have an orientation checklist for every new hire. I also have an onboarding process. And I also have, a set aside time when I personally get to introduce that individual to the entire team and, let them, take a chance, share with the team, who you are, what you did before and what led you to the business. So I do agree with that. I mean, it's, you just can't throw them to the curb and forget about them. I mean, if you're relying on this individual to be part of your team that you're growing, let them feel important from day one. You have to roll out the red carpet and give them all the support, like I said earlier, that they need to thrive in that new environment.
The point is that Alan's making so well is that you're open to listen, and that you not only are open to listen passively, but you're actively seeking to understand and to listen. And that's something we ask of ourselves to do for our clients. Why wouldn't we do that for our team members also? Dimitrius, give you any last chance, burning desires here?
I think for me, we want to create better cultures, more diverse cultures with intentionality. We want to build intentional cultures. It starts with the interview. It starts with turning, and what I always say, I can look at the resume, we can look at the sheet of paper, we can manipulate the facts just like anything, right? But at the end of the day, turn the paper over. Ask them what's their why. Ask them what really brought them here. Ask them some of the challenges. Ask them some of the wins that they've had in life and where they're at. And then find out if we got high trust, if we can trust these high integrity, high character, and can they be high performers? And if they check those 4 boxes, trust, character, integrity, and performance, give them the opportunity, because you don't know how many people out there are just looking for that one opportunity, that one shot, that one place that's going to say, you know what, I may be rough around the edges. I may not look like everybody else thinks I should look, or I may not look like the rest of the staff here. But if I was just given the opportunity like I was given, you'd watch so many more people come through this industry that would blow your mind. But one of the biggest things that I've ever did was in the last 3 years and I took it from you, Daniel, is we removed performance and one-on-ones from the same meeting. And that has changed the entire game for the way I interact with the associates. Performance is one thing. We have performance, KPIs, metrics, and everything. But then when you sit down and you get to know the heart of that individual, you get to know what they're really here for, where they're heading, where their heart is, and if they're aligned and if they're misaligned, how do we get them back aligned? Once we start having those conversations with people, that's where you get people that are ready to run through a brick wall. Starts at the interview. And if we can start being better about the way we approach those that are looking for an opportunity, we'll change the industry.
that's something to keep definitely in mind, guys. Thank you so much for joining me and talking about these topics and giving your insight and some great actionable tips that hopefully will help everyone who's listening or watching out there when you go back to the store to at least try one of them, and let's just start a bit of the change that we want to see, and let's shape this industry so that it makes sense for everyone who's coming up in it, and that we make our future leaders even more plausible to take over and to continue and do better than we've done so far. And isn't that really the name of the game? So once again, thank you so much to my panel. Thank you guys for listening, joining us here on the Wheelhouse, and we look forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks.